Welcome to episode 5 of the Ballers Blog podcast, where me and Ollie are joined by England Cricket and Yorkshire Diamonds captain Lauren Winfield as we discuss the 100 and that 2017 World Cup win. So I'm delighted to say me and Ollie are joined by Lauren Winfield of England Cricket and Yorkshire Diamonds. How are you at the moment in lockdown, Lauren?
Yeah, not too bad really. I think I've got it quite lucky compared to some because I got stuck out here in Australia, and it hasn't seemed to have been hit quite as hard as what the UK has. So in a lot of sense, I'm quite lucky that I've still been able to do a fair bit of my training and get out and about a little bit more.
So apart from training, you've been up to much else being productive?
I have actually. I've been using the time to do some personal development stuff. So I'm doing my strength and conditioning level 4, and I've been doing a course on commentary and presenting. So yeah, just kind of like we always say, I'll do that. I'd like to study that when I've got time, or I'll do that course when I've got time. And it's like, well, this is the absolute perfect opportunity because we've got so much time. So yeah, it's been good to get my teeth stuck into something different really and develop a different kind of area of yourself, an area of your life that you've not previously done before. So it's been good in that sense and gives you an opportunity. Like I say, the PCA have been pretty good in terms of getting content out there and encouraging everyone to keep up the personal development stuff really.
Do you spend a lot of time in Australia? I'm aware your partner Courtney Hill is Australian and you've featured in a couple of Big Bash series, so is it kind of a second home now?
Yeah, pretty much. We were obviously out here for the World Cup, and then we actually got married out here after the World Cup, so we've just been out here ever since really. A lot of the girls went back a week or so after the wedding. A few of my family is still out here and a few went home last week, so we're a lot of us have been residing on the other side of the world at the minute. So, but yeah, I spend at least a couple of months here every winter, so it does feel a little bit like home away from home, really.
I'm sure the weather's probably a lot better than it is in Yorkshire at the moment.
Yeah, to be fair, it's like all the Aussies are saying, oh, it's getting a bit cool of a morning, and you put your longs on in the house at night, and I'm thinking, this is like the hottest day of the year in England. It's like, you guys need a reality check. But apparently it's been all right over there. My mum and dad were saying that the weather's actually not been too bad, has it?
It's been mixed.
Yeah, we've got away with it. We've had a few good sunny days.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the recent news came out about the 100 being postponed till next year. You were set to captain the Northern Superchargers side. Has it been a bit of a stressful time at the moment with the uncertainty of what's really happening, and what was kind of the initial reaction?
Yeah, pretty gutted. I think a lot of players were looking forward to. I for one always love playing in the kind of the franchise and domestic competitions because it just gives you an opportunity to play with a lot of like homegrown Yorkshire players, but then a lot of younger players from different kind of regions, and it's a really important competition for developing women's cricket in England. And obviously, it was an opportunity to be up there and kind of amongst it with showcased with the men, which is disappointing that that's not going to go ahead. But in the grand scheme of things, it makes a lot of obvious sense. And I don't know what the situation is in terms of like rolling over contracts and stuff like that. The thing, like, I would be really keen to. Obviously, we've managed to, for example, we managed to sign Alyssa Healy. I would love it if she, rolled on to the next year and was still available. And you'd still, I guess, the only thing is you're worried if you can pin down as strong a squad a year on. But hopefully, those players are still committed to the club, and that was the teams that they wanted to play for initially. So, providing that they don't retire, they'll hopefully still be keen.
As you mentioned, it's kind of a big opportunity missed almost for women's cricket and growing the sport. Given that it was going to be broadcast some games on the BBC, does it feel like kind of a blow for the sport and just kind of the momentum it was gathering from the World Cup?
Yeah, definitely. I think you've seen it grow year upon year. Obviously, the Super League did a great job of, getting set on women's cricket, and that was a really good brand and competition. I think the other thing as well you've got to remember is we're very lucky that we're centrally contracted players. So although we've given a voluntary pay cut for this period of COVID, we're still financially secure and still have the opportunity to train every day. I think, when we take our own hats off and look at, some of the other girls that were playing in that competition, that is as much money as they're going to earn in 3 years playing cricket. Some of the contracts that the local players, they've never been offered that kind of money to play cricket in their lives. And I think, for a lot of the girls, that would go a long way to pay your rent and a mortgage and that kind of thing as well. So there's all those other financial losses for a lot of the players. I mean, we're quite lucky that we have a fair amount of financial security with our contracts, but there's a lot of players that have missed out on anywhere between 5 and 10 grand in a heartbeat, really.
You mentioned the growth of women's cricket there, but in terms of women's sport more widely, cricket seems to have led the way in terms of growth. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, really. I think people always ask that question in terms of growing the game. How do you grow the game? And I think a lot of it, I think, was down to that 2017 win at home, that World Cup. I think essentially people want to see teams doing well, and they want to see, England having success, or their local teams having success, and that's what attracts players to come back. So I think the way in which women's cricket's played now has moved on in terms of, it's a lot more appealing. It's there's bigger hits, bowlers are bowling quicker, fielders are more athletic, etc. So as a brand and as a product, it's much better. It's much improved. And I think, that it's just about opportunity. Everyone just wants an opportunity to play and to play a good standard of cricket that is well supported. And I think for years and continued is county cricket's the standard is really dying out and the support from the clubs is really dying out. So, the fantastic thing about the Super League was that it was so well supported. There was monetary value for players, which wasn't a lot, but it was more than nothing. Every team had a physio, a strength and conditioning coach, a head coach, an assistant coach, and it had a real professional feel to it. And that was a huge step up from the support that you get at county level. So I think, it's about better support systems from the clubs, making those female players feel part of the club, not just tag-ons. They have the right to represent their county and their club as much as any male does, and the support should back that up. But a lot of the time, girls or anybody, you just want the opportunity to be able to play to the best level that you can, and now that bridging gap between obviously county and England has enabled a lot of girls to do that.
The reaction to the postponement of the tournament was almost, looking through Twitter, there was it was more all about the men's game and how it was almost a blessing in disguise that it had been cancelled due to the criticism it had come under. Do you think critics were too quick to react to that and not to really consider the growth it would have given the women's game, as well as as you mentioned earlier, the financial element for players?
Yeah, hugely. I think, people forget, and I understand that it was, it's a different format of the game, and a lot of the traditionalists are against it and can't see how it was necessary and all those things. But, if you look at the bigger picture in terms of because it was a new format, the amount of money that was then pumped into it through TV rights, through different clubs and sponsorships, etc., that revenue that caused would not have been possible to create that with the T20 Blast. So the fact that they created a new format just meant that there was so much more money to put into the game. So, that's huge for someone like Sophia Dunkley, who's obviously had a taste of international cricket but hasn't then played a lot since. She needs a competition like that to be able to show the world and to show, England how good she can be. She also has now finished university and has no job because she's relying on hopefully getting a contract to then being a semi-professional cricketer. So now you've got players in no man's land who essentially are unemployed. And I think that's the bit that's been disappointing, is a lot of people have forgotten that, for a lot of the blokes, they've got contracts with their counties, they're still professional sports people. For a lot of the girls, they're now not. And they're in a real, kind of ghost town as to what do you do? Do you sit tight for another year and, I don't know, get a job to tide you over, or do you park your cricket dreams or whatever? So I think the brutal reality of a lot of, the women below centrally contracted England players have literally just gone from being a semi-professional cricketer employed to unemployed with no real income at all from sport. And that's the harsh reality
To me,
of the women's game, unfortunately.
To me, the kind of concept and the critics almost seem similar to when the Women's Ashes series was changed format from Test to Test, T20 in one day.
Yeah.
Does that kind of feel that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's just like, nobody likes change. And everyone, in different walks of life, or, whether it's in your gym program or your pre-game routine or whatever it is, it's human instinct to almost not like change. We like to be comfortable and we like to be familiar, especially, I feel like, as British people. I don't know if that's a bit of a bold statement, but we certainly seem to be a bit more stubborn and set in our ways. So, when something comes along that's a little bit different, the natural tendency is to go, well, that won't work. I don't like that. We don't need change. It's fine as it is. And until you see the product and what it can offer, then that's always going to be the opinion. But at the end of the day, the purpose of the 100 is to get world-class players back playing in England and make it an attractive product where you have the absolute best players in the world and the best players in the country, going head to head. And unfortunately, we didn't have that, without the 100.
Like these kind of, the start of the 100 would have been a watershed moment and watershed year for women's cricket, much like the 2017 World Cup when there was 180 million watching on TV on the final and there was a sellout crowd. Does that show why it is so important to make sure the 100 goes ahead next year? Hopefully it will, after everything's hopefully gone away. But that surge in participation, how important is it to get those young female cricketers into the game?
It's so important that it's accessible to them, whether it be to buy tickets and come watch the games or to turn the TV on and watch games on TV and aspire to want to be the next generation of cricketers. It's like anything. You have to see it to believe it. So it's so important that young males and females grow up watching women's football, women's cricket, netball, hockey, whatever it is on TV, so they can grow up with the aspiration and say, that can be me. I could be on TV representing my country, and kind of plant that seed. If they can't see it and it's not accessible, it's going to be really hard for them to want to become it. or even to just become a fan of it. So I think it's so important. I think the TV coverage thing is massive. It's monumental in terms of getting that exposure, and it's much better as a player to have those people in the grounds with bums on seats and creating the atmosphere. But the money of the TV rights brings in is crucially important, but also the exposure. Most people now have sports channels at home, and if they're not able, or then they don't want to go and watch at a ground, then they can watch on TV. And that's just so important. As a kid, I kind of grew up watching all the men play cricket, and I never really thought that I would be a professional sports person, cricketer. I never really thought that was kind of a possibility or on the cards. And at the time, it massively wasn't. But as soon as you're kind of surrounded by it and you see, you might meet some of the England players, or you've watched a few games, then you can certainly. It changes your thought process on what's possible.
Do you think perhaps given the current situation of there's no sport going on due to the coronavirus, do you think maybe that might tell people maybe not to take cricket for granted, especially women's sport, and kind of it might mean they look to all sport and appreciate it?
I hope so. I hope this moment for a lot of people, I think, not just sport, but I think it gives you opportunity to sit back and, be grateful for what you have and to realise what you really missed. And I think a lot of people will obviously realise how much they miss sport, supporting sport, watching sport, playing sport. And hopefully, when it returns, the spike in support and people, out in the parks playing, or going to training at their local clubs, or coming to watch, domestic games, international games, or whatever. Hopefully people kind of really buy into it and realise how much that it's truly been missing over these last few months.
So as we mentioned earlier, the kind of a big watershed year was 2017 with the World Cup. What was that whole tournament like in regards to growing the sport, and what was that day like of the final?
It was such a surreal tournament, to be honest. It kind of felt like it was meant to be. We went on a real journey from obviously losing that first game to India, and every game then on was kind of fighting by tooth and nail, and it just, like I say, it was surreal, but it just felt like it was meant to be. We won so many close games that we probably had no right to win, but we somehow found a way. And then, waking up and heading to Lords on that morning of the final and seeing, just how many people came to support the game, really. There was a lot of Indian fans there, and there was a lot of noise. But yeah, just a feeling you'll never ever forget. And like, even that final we kind of had no right to win from the position that we were in, but it was just a testament to us always finding a way, and once again, doing that. But to have a packed out crowd at Lords with all your family and friends, and kind of doing that lap of honour at the end is, they're the kind of moments that you absolutely live for and train so hard for, really.
I think for me the standout performance of that final was obviously that spell from Anya Shrubsole. Probably go down for me as one of the kind of best spells of bowling in English cricket history, really. What was it like to be there on the pitch at the time whilst that was going on?
It was unbelievable. You were like, is this really happening? Is this... Because it kind of ebbed and flowed the game, and it was at a point where you were in the field and you thought, oh my God, is this game slipping away from us here? They're edging closer and closer to the total. And then, as the screws started to turn and the game was kind of slow, the momentum to us, it was just so surreal that, it was almost like, I can't believe what's going on. I can't believe what's happening right in front of our eyes. And I think the most amazing thing, and I think the biggest message from any of that was that Anya hadn't really had the best tournament with the ball. She'd struggled at times for rhythm, and she wasn't in the best headspace. But it just goes to show how quickly things change, and how anyone on their day, and things start to go your way. Anything's possible. But it was just phenomenal. Like, as we started to take wickets and the crowd were getting behind us, and I think they were getting a sense of, I don't know, you can feel the atmosphere, can't you, how the game's changing and momentum shifting. But it was just, I can't quite believe what's happening in front of our eyes, and is this game coming our way? But yeah, it was unbelievable, and like, Anya's a pretty understated person, and she will never blow her own trumpet, but I think she'll be, she'll look back on that day and those memories and be hugely proud of herself in her own little way.
That England team at the time seemed such a tight-knit unit. Who were kind of the characters in it, and what kind of, I assume the celebrations afterwards were quite big?
Well, we actually couldn't get in anywhere afterwards because we all refused to take our playing kit off, and we couldn't get in anywhere. So we just we stayed at the ground for ages, just in the dressing room, and then we just went back to the hotel and just had drinks in the bar at the hotel, because like I said, we were like, we're not taking our playing kit off, and we tried to get into a few different places, but nowhere was having us in our playing kit. So we just, like I say, we just went back to the hotel. But in terms of that team, it was a hugely special team, and I think that it was one that was just on a complete journey, that we knew exactly each other's roles. We had a great understanding of, this is your role as a collective partnership. Whether it be batting or bowling, we're going to absolutely back you to the hills. And we believe that you're the best people, there to do that job. And it wasn't something that was built overnight. It was kind of, it almost felt like, how people say about an Olympic cycle, and you're at the start, and then you're just building all the time. You're just building. And it felt like, series by series, game by game, we were just building, and the focus was to say it wasn't to win the World Cup would be the wrong thing to say, but it was always just about, how good can we be? Let's just keep pushing ourselves. Let's see how good we can be. And for each other, and there was just such a sense of a collective goal, and yeah, just absolutely doing what the team needs, and just seeing how far we can go, and how good we can be. And it was never, it wasn't. We'd had training sessions at Lord's, and we'd spoken about building towards the World Cup, but it was always like it was just planting the seeds at different points. It was never like overly spoken about. It was almost just drip feeding. Okay, we're going to go to Lord's to train today because we're going to get familiar with it, and that all those kind of things dripped in along the journey. But yeah, it was a really special group, and a really really special team that was just clear on their role to do for the team, and then just going out there and doing that, really. And I think that the blokes, obviously, with their one day World Cup, you can see such similar traits in the way that this is playing, and this is what the team needs, and sometimes it's going to come off and sometimes it's not, but we understand and respect that you are doing what you're playing the way in which the team needs. And sometimes, that might be going up a gear, and sometimes that might be going down a gear. But there was just real clarity and real settled, team and environment that led us to obviously be able to do what we did.
with a team that's kind of had that success and is so competitive within international cricket, how frustrating was it with the World Cup this year and the way that ended with the not a ball being bowled in the semi-final and the ruling meaning India went through? Do you think there needs to be a rule change with that from the ICC? Because it seemed, from a fan point of view, poor organisation not to even have a reserve day.
Yeah, I think so. I think we almost got warning signs in the T20 World Cup that was in October in the Caribbean as well, because there were so many games that were lost to poor weather. And even of the day of the final, that the final was obviously in the night for that previous World Cup, but it rained all day, and it was like, oh God, is this game going to get washed out, the World Cup final? Unfortunately, we got on, but it was, even then, it was, it was squeaky bum time with the weather there, and then for it to obviously completely knock us out in Sydney was just devastating, really. And I think it's just really disappointing from an organisation point of view, and I don't think that people realise how much playing in World Cups and how much effort and time and effort, and it consumes you. It's your absolute dream every time you get to play in a World Cup, and for it to just be ended like that, with so out of your control and no real second chance of a game, is just, it's just so disappointing. And hopefully we're the last team that has to suffer in such a way that they now look at the ruling and change the rules in regards to rain days, because like I said, it's just so disappointing to go out in that fashion. And then it was a bit of a kick in the teeth to then, the pain of watching the final and how that then panned out. There's almost a sense of, I felt like we would have given them a better run for their money on the day, should we have had the opportunity. And it's just, like I say, rules are rules, and I completely understand that, but it's just so disappointing as a player, and for supporters and fans that get behind the team, for it to just come to a grounded halt like that is, it's really disappointing. And you wait in another, you've got to wait your turn until the next T20 World comes around again, and it's, you're longing for that opportunity to put your best foot forward again.
In terms of the kind of whole cricket picture, it almost seems, with kind of ruling out due to rain, almost as if it kind of devalues slightly the tournament slightly by doing that. What was kind of what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one, because India played some fantastic cricket throughout. All of the teams that progressed through to the semi-finals, they were the best teams in the competition. And India have played, they're a fantastic team, and they played some great cricket throughout the tournament. It just, like you say, I think as a player, we were saying, as we were watching the rain bomb it down, you'd rather go through with an opportunity to play than get a free pass. Like you say, it almost devalues the final. If you get the opportunity to be there without having had to fight your corner and show how good you can be and be put under pressure. So I think, like as a player, you never want an easy ride there. You want to absolutely deserve to be there. And, not saying that India didn't deserve to be there by all means, but like you say, it does slightly feel like a bit of a free pass and a slightly devalued final, really.
So going back to the start of your career and domestically, what has kind of been your journey up to England, really?
I always kind of played all sports, really. Like growing up, it wasn't necessarily, oh, she'll definitely be a cricketer. That's her sport. I played all sports growing up as a kid. I was actually quite a late bloomer in terms of channeling, everything into a single sport. it wasn't really until I went to university at Loughborough where I properly put my heart and soul into just cricket. So yeah, like I said, that was when I really started to train and to kind of channel my energy towards playing cricket and to obviously aspire to playing cricket for England. But up until then, it was always cricket and football. Was playing cricket for Yorkshire and went through all the age group stuff there, and was playing football at Leeds United, and it was kind of one of them where it was, you know, football would get annoyed with cricket because I'd miss a few games at the start of the season, and then cricket would get annoyed with football because I'd do my ankle and then miss a bit of cricket. So yeah, like there came a point when I just decided to stop playing football and just keep playing cricket really. But like I said, I was just a sporty kid. I just loved all sports. And it wasn't until a bit later on. And like I said, it was probably playing like county first team cricket against the likes of Charlotte Edwards and Lydia Greenway, where I then thought, no, I want to give cricket a really good go here. You know, it'd be pretty cool to play for my country, and there's a real opportunity to do that. And that was seen by playing against those kind of players. But up until that point, I didn't really see it as a viable option for a young girl, really.
You mentioned those figures such as Charlotte Edwards, who are inspirational in getting more participation into the sport, but who kind of other figures that you feel are important, and maybe on an individual sense, who are the figures that helped you on your journey?
Yeah,
and helped you
to be honest,
get into
like
cricket?
my role models growing up were always like the male cricketers, because that's the only kind of cricket that I watched. You know, like watching Ashes series on TV and stuff in the summer. That was kind of the only, like I say, the only cricket I watched. So it was like Freddie Flintoff and Alex Stewart and those, you know, like watching Kevin Peterson. Those kind of players grow up. And then in terms of, I was just really lucky. Like my cricket club when I was a kid is still my cricket club that I go down to now and help with the little all stars and go and watch the lads if they're playing on a Saturday. But I had just a really good coach at Stamford Bridge in Graham Tipping, who he's now actually involved in the Yorkshire pathway stuff with the boys. But he was a really, really passionate coach, knew his stuff, was really keen to work with me and kind of give me one-to-ones and stuff like that. And then the biggest impact on my career was when I went to Loughborough University, and Graham Dilley was the coach there at the time. So the female coach was Sally Ann Briggs, but the male head coach of the MCCU was Graham Dilley. And Sally Ann had said to me, you know, I think you should come to uni. You can do your cricket almost like semi-professional, really, obviously not getting paid, but in terms of the program that they offered. And do your uni, get your degree, and then see what you want to do. So at the time, I was a bit lost. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself or what I wanted to do for a job or a career. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. That seems like a good balance of being able to, you know, do my sport and commit to that, but also, if all else fails, I've got myself a degree. But Dills was the first person that kind of said to me, you know, he really took me under his wing. He was almost like a father figure to me at uni, and he'd said to me, you know, mate, I think you can be a really good cricketer if you get your head down and work hard, and you know, and if you really want it. And I think it's one of them where it's like you kind of don't believe in yourself until somebody else believes in you. And he was the first person who really, you know, he said to me, you're an unbelievable talent, but nothing's a given. You've got to work for it, and stop going out on the drink at uni and get yourselves in the nets and in the gym and stuff. And from that moment, I was all in, to be honest. It was just like, right, okay, I'm going to give this a red hot go. I was always asking for extra next sessions, hitting more balls, last person to leave the gym. I just kind of flicked a switch, really. It was, for him to say something like that to me, obviously being an ex-professional cricketer and a legend of the game, I was just like, well, I'd be bloody stupid if I didn't give it a go then, didn't I? And that pretty much, like I say, flicked the switch, and then I was all in, and I was, just did everything I could to try and give myself the best chance and be as good as I could be. And like I say, that Loughborough Uni was probably the catalyst of a lot of my development, just in terms of hit more balls, to be at the the National Performance Centre in Loughborough, and just to have almost like a professional setup on the MCCU. So that was probably, like I say, my club coach was fantastic in terms of giving me his time when I was still a young pup. But also he was more than just like a club standard coach. He really knew his stuff. And secondly, obviously, Graham Dilley at Loughborough Uni.
I can imagine they were all quite proud when you went on to play for Yorkshire, and not only play for Yorkshire, but captain Yorkshire. How is it to be able to say that you captain Yorkshire, which is such a proud
honestly,
cricketing
Yorkshire
county?
means the absolute world to me. And like I say, I feel like I'm definitely very a loyal person, in terms of, like I said, I would still try and go down and help with the All-Stars at my local cricket club from where I grew up in York. And I'm very much the same with Yorkshire. I wouldn't be playing and living out my dream playing for England if I didn't have, that progression through the Yorkshire age groups. And it's, like I say, I put a lot of pressure on myself because I just want the club to succeed, and I really want to do well for the club and lead the club, passionately and to success. So I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself with that. Almost don't allow myself the same freedom as you would be if you didn't care as much about your roots and about the club. But it's a part of me, and it's a part of my roots, and it's something that I never really want to lose. As long as the club will always want me, then it's where I always want to play my cricket. It doesn't mean that there's some things that you wish you got more support in certain areas from the club. As the women's cricket doesn't always get. There's obviously still a work in progress with some areas of that, but in terms of there's no other county or club that I would ever rather represent. And I just feel like I think a lot of people, they're kind of tainted views on all these franchise competitions and stuff, and it is nice to see local players representing those local sides, and it always means that little bit more, I think, to the fans and to the players themselves. But whether you're the Northern Superchargers or the Yorkshire Diamonds or whatever, you're still a Yorkshire person, and you're still representing the roots. So that's the most important bit. But yeah, like I said, playing for Yorkshire, people always say, you play for England, and talking about playing for Yorkshire and stuff. It means just as much to me to play for Yorkshire as it does to England. Like I said, at times I almost put more pressure on myself playing for Yorkshire because I just really want to do well, and want to do well for the club, and to see us improve in how we're getting on in these competitions and stuff. But I feel like things are very much moving in the right direction. They've got some good people in place with, obviously with Danny Hazel coming on board as the coach. I know there's been a lot of movement staff-wise with this regional 50 over competition that's looking to begin this year, hopefully. So I think they're making really positive strides as a club, and certainly in terms of how they're treating the women and how they're supporting the women's side of the club is come on leaps and bounds, really.
Do you think that passion that people in Yorkshire have for the county is something that you don't quite get many places else, especially in cricket?
I don't know. We're just bloody stubborn, aren't we? Northern.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain. Well, I was talking to my wife about this because she's a Queenslander, and they're a little bit like. Also, Queensland hates Sydney because Sydney are like the Southerners to us. And she was saying, "Oh, if you're a Queenslander, you don't want to play for anyone but Queensland." And I was like, I feel like that's Yorkshire, or maybe even, I hate to say the L word, but Lancashire, like the northern team seem to be so embedded in their roots and so passionate about where they're from. There's just a huge sense of pride. I don't know. Like I say, I've only ever lived in the north, and that's how I feel. But I certainly feel like that is definitely the case. And you see the stubborn Yorkshire fans who, if Yorkshire aren't doing well, they're hurt like hell. And they absolutely love to see the team do well. So, yeah, I feel like it is something about Yorkshire in the north that people are hugely proud of where they're from and have a great sense of pride in representing the club, but also getting behind the club. And I think Leeds especially is a special place for sport. You've obviously got, you've got the football team, you've got on the back of the stadium, you've got the Rhinos, and then you've got the cricket. So it's a huge sporting hotbed and a big part of the city as well.
So on our Ballers Blog podcast, the final bit we do of each podcast is where we get our guest to do a top 5. So we're doing top 5 players you've played with throughout your career.
Say that again. So the top 5 players I've played with throughout my career. Oh.
Yeah.
Catherine Brunt, Charlotte Edwards, Sophie Devine, who else? Sophie Eccleston, and I hate to say it because she's an Aussie, but Alyssa Healy.
Fantastic side, that.
What are the kind of qualities in some of those players that you kind of admire from playing with them?
Always someone she's one of my really good pals, but she's someone who I've always admired because she was just so resilient, and so 100% all in, would do absolutely anything. She does everything at full tilt for the team and will put her body on the line 100 times over. But more so than just like I say, she's bounced back from so many injuries across her career. And at times we've seen her in all sorts of states, getting flown home on series and tournaments. And just to keep bouncing back. I think that's a huge quality that I admire in her. And just like I say, just how much she cares and how much she's all in every time she plays. The thing about Soph and Alyssa's a bit similar. They haven't always, Soph maybe a bit more so, but Alyssa less so. They haven't always been at the top of the game. So Alyssa for a lot of years played for a long time, but never really made her stamp on things. And I think I remember her baiting us when we played the Ashes one time over in Australia, and she was giving us loads of stick behind the stumps, and she had an average of 9. And it was like, mate, you want to have a look at the board up there before you start chirping. But how good they've become kind of late on in their career. And just that, just keep getting back on the horse. And obviously they've both come off really good years. I reckon probably just stripping back their expectations as well and just letting themselves play a little bit more freely. But yeah, that carefree attitude they bring to batting in the way they go about their business, but also that it's not always been that way for them. Like I said, they've played Alyssa more so than Soph. Soph's kind of always been up there as an all-rounder. But yeah, like I said, the way that they've almost flicked the switch and suddenly become, one good year and everything changes for you.
I think that's a great point to kind of conclude this podcast. I'm aware we're probably running on quite a bit. Thank you very much for joining us, Lauren. It's been very interesting.
No worries, no problem.
Everything in your story. I hope we all hope to see you out on a cricket field as soon as possible once again, and hopefully, everyone's
brilliant.
well
Thanks,
out
boys.
there in Australia, and hope you stay safe.
See you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you very much to Lauren for joining us and sharing her thoughts on the 100 and her story of the Cricket World Cup in 2017. I apologise if there's been any technical issues with this episode, as recording from England to Australia is a difficult one, but I think we managed to get away with it. Thank you very much for listening. Get in touch with us at BallersBlog1 on Twitter, at BallersBlog Sports on Instagram. Tell us what you want us to produce and who you want us to have on, and we'll try our best to see what happens. Thank you very much for listening once again. Stay safe. See you next week.